Welcome to Cain and Table. I am Will Cain, and today I'm with Jon Chait of the New Republic. So, John, Jonah Goldberg, columnist of the National Review, wrote the other day that he admitted in that small gap of mystery when we didn't know who the New York City Times Square bomber was, that he was hoping it wasn't some white militia nutjob, because he feels like it feeds a narrative on the left that suggests any full-throated opposition to Obama is inciting domestic violence. But Jonah didn't stop there. He said that he actually also thinks that some on the left felt the opposite, that they hoped it was a white militia nutjob and hoped it wasn't some Islamist jihadist, because, Jonah says, some on the left just don't like the war on terror. So, John, were you hoping that it was a white militia nutjob?
I don't recall hoping that. No, I didn't have any opinions. You know, I can swear I've heard some African Americans talk about how when they see a crime on the news, you know, a robbery or something, they think, you know, please let it not be a black guy. And that's probably what Jonah was doing. Don't let it be a white militia nut job. Please don't let it be a white militia nut job. I mean, I'm kidding with Jonah. I know he's not in a militia.
Right.
But so I mean, I think it was part of that tribal instinct a little bit. But no, I don't really look. We've had domestic terrorism by white militia nut jobs, and we've had domestic terrorism by Islamic nut jobs, and I don't feel kinship towards one more than the other. To me, they're.
Do you think though? Hey, John, do you think though that some on the left are overhyping the domestic terrorist angle?
No, I don't. We've certainly had some domestic. I mean, you know, white domestic terrorism, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
You know, the Oklahoma City bombing. You had a guy flying his plane into the IRS headquarters, and you've had a lot of instances where just people with guns go out in public and start shooting. At some point, it's really hard to draw a line between these different kinds of incidents and say one is terrorism and one is just an insane guy who wants to kill people.
Right, but I think Jonah's argument is one that says, look, those kind of incidences are being used by some on the left, not all, some, and he definitely points to Frank Rich as a violator of this, of using those types of incidences to tie to opposition to Obama, to tie it to the Tea Party movement, to use those kind of instances to define those movements. Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, I think that happens. I think he's right. I think there are people do that a bit, and I can see why that would be annoying. So yeah, I think that happens.
Okay. And do you think some on the left are also guilty of downplaying the Islamist jihadist terrorist threat?
Downplaying compared to how the right portrays it, or compared to reality? Well, I mean, some on the left certainly, you can find someone somewhere on the left who downplays it. Yes. Do I think liberals, in general, downplay the threat of terrorism? No, I don't. You have a similar divide as you had during the Cold War, where people on the right were proposing much more aggressive policies than liberals, and I would say mainstream conservatives were proposing.
What's driving that divide? What's driving that divide? Is it a feeling that the threat is not as great as the right is portraying it?
That's certainly part of it, right? I mean, so in the Cold War, you had conservatives very, very alarmed about the threat of communism, and the sort of mainstream liberal response to communism, Truman, Kennedy, etc., was containment. And the right-wing critique was containment won't work. We need rollback. And you had a lot of figures on the right proposing, nuclear bombing China and other very, very aggressive responses to communism. So the liberals, the containment liberals, I suppose you could say they were downplaying the threat of communism in response to that, but I don't think they were downplaying it in response to in relation to reality.
So you're saying it's a reactionary movement against the right's position, and it was the same as it was with the communistic threat, and now it's the same with this Islamist jihadist threat?
Yeah, I'm saying there's certainly some parallels there.
Yeah.
I don't think that liberals are any less opposed to terrorism or Islamic ideology than conservatives. I think conservatives do tend to take a more alarmist view of the danger and the capability of terrorists. In my view, the one really serious threat we have from Islamic radicalism is the potential that they will obtain a nuclear weapon at some point. Everything else is a rounding error compared to that danger. Whereas in my critique of the right is that they kind of conflate all these dangers. That, I would say, if this attack in Times Square had succeeded, it would be awful, but it's not something that threatens the fabric of our society. It's not something that should make people live in terror from day to day, and it won't be unless we choose to let it.
Right.
And I would say that
we're going to have to do this in a separate conversation, John, because I'm going to admit to you and the viewers, my battery's going to go dead. But,
all right.
Hey, listen, you guys can find John on the New Republic. You can follow me on Twitter at Will Cain. John, I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Will.